Hey, welcome back to another edition of DevHub Live. I am really excited about this episode because we're going to dive into blockchain as a tech stack. And uh, I'm so ready for this. I've been planning this for weeks. I was waiting for a time when we had no guest. I have no guest, so we're going to do that. Uh, as you can see, I'm actually so excited that I'm actually standing. I'm moving around. We got things ready to go. I have my projector lens set up as well. We can draw stuff. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a fun episode. And I really encourage you to ask questions or whatever else. But the goal of this time, and the reason why I'm doing this episode like this, is because we're at a point now where crypto is becoming a little bit more mainstream. The terms of Web3 and what that is becoming a bit more mainstream. We're seeing it not just in, I'm a US citizen, not just in the US, but also across the globe and other countries as well. And it's a good time to remind everyone of what is actually available to start building and what can you actually start to do on blockchain. So we're going to kind of talk that through. And I really want to kind of, can take some audience questions if you have them. But this is something where, like, I just really want to dive into the developer side of all of this. So let's have some fun. Let's kind of go through all of this and let's kind of start at the beginning and talk about how we can start to build using blockchain. So this episode really again is geared towards all kinds of builders, not just Web3. So to me, like we're at this inflection point, and this inflection point really is about saying, can we start to take pieces of Web3 and start to put it into what any other product instead of thinking just always crypto first. We're starting to think about, can this become part of my larger infrastructure? So some things that we want to talk about here is it's not about crypto hype. This is not about trying to just capture value. This is really much more about, can we actually leverage the blockchain for what it is, what it can do, what it can't do, and start to build products around that. And that includes, again, stuff in AI as well as just general everyday products. So let's kind of just set some groundwork, a little bit of what we're actually going to do here. One is, I don't want this to be just about the concept of like NFTs and tokens, and it's all about value and everything else there. I want it to be much more about, it's this, blockchain is this tamper proof logbook, right? It is a ledger, and there are things that we can do there. But it's more than just that. It's the smart contracts, it's the other pieces that go into this infrastructure that can start to fit to maybe what you're building. So let's start there. And let's actually jump into what I would consider here the first topic, which is, it's just infra. And for me, really, like, you need to understand that when we say that it's just infrastructure, it is really no different than, going out, signing up for an AWS account and putting your stuff on a server there. Except now, maybe you have a one-time fee versus monthly. You have much more control. You're able to do stuff that is permissionless, which we'll talk about. We'll jump into stuff about, like, what does composability actually mean? How does composability fit into all of this? And why is that actually important for what we're trying to do here? So, a couple different things here. I would never instruct anyone to build their entire app on like Excel, like a spreadsheet, right? Because one, it's very limiting. Your audience is going to be small people who are just comfortable using that. It's a weird way to do a product. I think that also could now be said about like being pure blockchain. Okay. I think when you say, I'm only putting stuff on chain and only leveraging the ledger aspect of blockchain, you are limiting yourself into what you can build, what you're doing. But if you think about it as part of your product. Now it transforms what you're trying to do. So here's how we think about it, right? So let's say you're a coffee company and you're selling your coffee beans all around the world. Well, this is kind of like, and this is an older example that has kind of been around before. But again, think about like what goes into being a coffee company. You have paper trails, right? You're going to have people, logbooks and email exchanges, and you're going to have all of these different things. You're going to have to go through audits in different countries, different borders, all these different pieces here that uh, make logistics complicated. But what if you then made a singular product that was able to do all that tracking, verify, make sure that those, what was said in that logbook is true, simplify the auditing process by putting everything on chain? So the way it goes is you can then start to have every checkpoint from farm to port to, even to the actual coffee shop checking in, and you can see that trail of who handled the different things, when were those beans first picked, when were they actually distributed, all of that stuff. And now it opens up a couple different things. One, if you wanted to make it consumer side, you wanted to give insight to end users, which is your coffee drinkers, you could do that. Might not be overly appealing, and I don't know how many people besides some coffee nerds who are actually going to care about that. But as a coffee distributor, now being able to have one area which is absolute proof, everything is checking into that. It really changes, again, the aspect of what goes into your business. In theory, it should simplify things. It should lower your cost. It should provide better insight into what actually is there. And that's just by simply implementing the ledger part of blockchain. So again, now you can start to say, look, if I had this set up and I'm now logging all these different checkpoints, I can also do other things too. I could have smart contracts built into that allow for the release of funds upon checkpoint. Hey, this delivery got made, this got checked in, this has been authenticated. There you go. That payment is released. It's automated. There's no more worrying about, making sure invoices are paid, things like that. It simplifies that process. It also allows those who are maybe working in different situations where banking is more difficult. It simplifies all of those parts of it. So now you have all of that. The other side of it is, as a product, like, you want to be able to have insights, and having insights that are really clear and that are really beneficial to your company and to maybe people who are using your product comes down to like something as simple as, can I extract the right data from this? And now I could, because I've now been able to track how long did it take from to go from the farm to the port. We have all this actual proper check-in information. It's not just if somebody missed something. We're kind of a limit. We still need the human interaction. You still have like the app or whatever. It's like the beans don't check themselves in, obviously. But like, this is now verifiable where you know exactly when it happened. Maybe then because payment got released. All of that type of stuff. So it's phase one. And then you can start to see how that blooms into hopefully a bigger product. Let's also just take a step back with this a little too, that like in this example here, I'm trying to hit a couple different areas with something very simple as just immutable ledger of like, hey, dispute resolution. I never received those beans. Oh, well, they were checked in here at this date. This was verified. This payment was released. Oh, I didn't get paid. This invoice didn't come through. All of that could start to get eliminated, which in the long run actually saves money. So now it could hopefully bring some costs down, whatever that might be. And now hopefully, again, it adds to improving the bottom line for all parties involved. Okay. So that's just like one part when you start to think about infra. The smart contract piece is really important too, because then in the smart contract piece, I can start building in all kinds of logic that I would normally have, except I don't have to worry about the interaction of it, right? The proof of what happened is there. We are relying on the law of code to execute on that. And so, as long as those proper conditions are met and your logic is sound, then the contract can handle that all for you. And you eliminate, again, possibly bad actors. Again, this is not a perfect system, but you start to eliminate some bad actors. You start to eliminate situations where you may have trouble, where I can't get particular payments out, things that get missed, all of that stuff. So we start to eliminate that. And again, I want to hopefully emphasize to people who are thinking about this as a product is that you can pick and choose of where this all fits in. So now I can still have my front end hosted wherever. I can have a mobile app. I can have whatever I maybe need. I could build it into different hardware. So I could run on if I have scanners, I have weigh scales, right? It's all just code. I can just still build an API that connects to this and still does all that. So now something goes on the scale, it gets weighed, it gets logged, everything is there. It starts to change how you think about where your checks and balances actually are for something as logistic like this. We also have this even on a smaller scale. So now, if you just think of where your product is and like what things you need to prove to someone. Yeah, the ticketing one is always thrown out there, right? Like I can do tickets. And sure, like that's an obvious one. But we can take it even a step further, right? Of like where now if I were able to put, just something as simple as like a loyalty card on there, right? Maybe my gym membership is built into that. And the reason why maybe that's useful is because now there is immutable proof of the times that I checked in or if I earned certain points or all that type of stuff. And then the composability part means that someone else can come build on top of that. So this is where the synergy of having multiple products or multiple partnerships becomes really interesting, and it really saves on development time too. So if you ever built something at enterprise level, let's say you're building a loyalty program for a gym. It's not just like, oh, all right, I'm going to throw together a database. I'm going to store this. I'll build some APIs that people can connect to. Sure, whatever. But then if I want to bring in a partner, I have to make sure that do I have the right stuff for them to actually connect correctly? Do I have the setup for them to authenticate? What kind of data am I serving for them? I'm now maintaining an API for them that maybe I don't want to keep maintaining. But if I do it on chain and now the data is essentially publicly available, now I can say to that maybe juice bar next door, hey, you can combine your loyalty program with our loyalty program and provide rewards because it's all there. And now it simplifies that process. And it's a different paradigm of trying to build. It's not so closed source. It is now something where right now everyone is so concerned all the time of having these moats, right? Like you have a moat. And the reality of your moat is that your moats are getting destroyed. They're getting destroyed by AI. They're getting destroyed by all these different other things of accessibility, whatever else. But for you as a product builder, if you can start to be a little bit more open and rethink how you perceive your product and how you perceive the architecture of it, it's a very different setup. So I think this is the first thing where, if you are stepping outside of what you're trying to build in a traditional sense and think about the properties of blockchain and smart contracts, you could really rethink the overall infrastructure of your product. And I also think too, part of what is important here is going to be your generalized like cost and everything else. Because I think that's something that for any developer, any product builder, really is super important. But we're going to get to costs and all that stuff just in a minute. Okay. So, all right, we just had a question. So, why is there a pen and marker? Don't worry, we're going to get there. Everything will be solved. Okay. So, if people are curious about that, I will absolutely, we will get to that in just a moment. All right. So, how do you get started? And I think getting started here is really simpler than it has to be, simpler than I think most people try to make it out to be, right? So, like right now, you start thinking about like, I need to have, uh, I need to have something set up where I am basically having to build a full on-chain product. And I'm going to disagree with that. I'm going to say, look, you can make it really simple. You can take one component of it, one piece. So starting simple. So maybe it's something as simple as, again, logging pieces of information to chain that you think are worthwhile and that could be there permanently. The other part of it is that you could do something where, again, I can start to use some abstraction and leverage the chain without having to go, you know, fully into it. So starting simple is maybe something as easy as building a course app. So let's actually let me talk a little bit about building like an educational product and kind of what that looks like as starting simple on chain. Okay. So this is where it goes. See my hand here. Okay, so this is my course. Okay, so I have a course that's online. Okay, and so from here, what is the next piece is now is like I need to start being able to allow my students to verify. So I have all my students. We'll make some little people here. There we go. Hello. They want to learn. So now they come in and they want to take my course. After they take my course, and again, this could be in real life, this could be fully online, whatever it might be. There needs to be proof of how they took it. Well, I could just send them a PDF, right, of like a certificate, but that doesn't really work because that's easily modifiable. There's no real proof there, or whatever else, right? So, uh, again, I could have just a database somewhere, right? But like, what if I go out of business? What if I no longer want to run this? What if things happen in life, right? So I move on. And so now all of those students are left without sufficient proof that they took the course. So here's how we make it simple. Okay. All of this is still Web 2. Right. So here we go. Right, Web 2. All this is still Web 2. But now I could have, right? I could have my blockchain. And now I can list all the scores, if they completed or not, things like that. So now I have a much better experience. And all I've done is my course is still fully Web 2, right? It's on, maybe it's online, maybe it's in person, whatever it might be. And that doesn't have to change. All I've added in is something like this, where now they can always go and verify. And this is like a super basic example, but this is something that, again, I think for people who are building, uh, it's a great way to start to integrate yourself into Web3. And not just because I want you just to use and build on Web3. Like I want to really emphasize here that I'm not saying build a Web 3.2 just for the sake of doing it, because it's actually a better outcome. Okay, it's a better outcome. Because here it is again. Let's think about what goes into normally having this data if I have a course. Okay. So if if I have a course and I do it the traditional way, everything is Web 2, I'm going to have my database. Okay. Here's my little fancy database, right? I'll make it look like that. This is my database. Now, that could be any Web 2 provider, doesn't matter. I don't pick and choose. But this is now going to be a monthly cost, right? So fine. That might be fine. It could be as small as maybe $5 a month. It doesn't matter. The actual cost of it is irrelevant. What's important here is it's something you have to maintain. Okay. If you have a product from, let's say, 10 years ago, and it was using like MySQL 5.7 still, now like you have to upgrade, because like now it's fully past end of life. Like you've skipped every other upgrade. You're now at the far end of life. Things are going to start breaking. Your providers are going to probably start charging you more money just for you to still have it on on their service. So these are things now you have to consider. So now you have to say, okay, I have to go back, I have to update it. If I don't update it, it's gone, right? It's gone forever. Or maybe hopefully somebody copied it. Again, the PDF approach isn't great. Yes, it puts the onus on the student, but again, like those can be faked. There's just all the different issues now where it's not as properly verifiable. And that's really, again, the part I want to get across here. So now I have those two things. And so we have, I'm going to put here upkeep too. Right, upkeep. Now, the other side of this, though, that I think, again, is like, again, we're going super simple here. We're just replacing one part of this. I can still have all of my records and everything else in this database. I can have my users. I can still do my authentication system. I'm not saying you have to change all that. You can do your authentication system through the blockchain. Absolutely. Like that's absolutely something that you can do. There's great tutorials all over. We have some great stuff in our docs down below. If you go there about using it as an authentication system, great opportunities there. But something as simple as for the certification for the class record, if I go on chain, we'll call it a B chain, right? So on my blockchain, it's a one time, right? So it is a one time fee for that data. It's probably pretty cheap because it's just data about like people completion, whatever else. It is now composable. So now it's a lot of pressure to spell correctly on air. And now other people can build on top of it, and is verifiable, right? And it's I guess it's proof, which is the same thing, right? Those are synonyms here. But you now have verifiable data and you have proof. And I apologize if you can't read my handwriting, but you get the idea. That's what I'm talking through. But now you've simply replaced that piece of it. You now have a much more robust product. You now have something that you can feel good about, that my students' data is going to be available to them, the course completion stuff. If I were to expand, if I were to partner, right, I can easily say, hey, you want to see if this person actually completed something? Here you go. You can just query the chain and it's done. And that's like where, again, I think this is just a super simple way of doing this. And you don't have to even include like users getting wallets, right? Like the whole part of like, oh, I don't want to say the word crypto in my stuff. I don't want to have to get people to have to uh, sign up for a new wallet. You eliminate all of that. It's all right here. Okay. So let's continue on here. That's starting simple. Okay. Now, kind of already mentioned it, right? But let's talk a little bit about cost. scalability. I want to talk about, I guess, two sides of this. One is the perception of what blockchain is today. The perception of blockchain today might be expensive, slow, whatever else. That is an older paradigm. I think we all know where that comes from, Ethereum, but now on Near, on other chains like Solana, Sui, whatever else, they are much more inexpensive. They are much faster. It is much closer to real time. Yes, it's not quite the speed of a read write database that you can get, but there are ways to make it feel pretty close. And you are pretty close. For most like user examples, most situations, like it's there, right? You can do this stuff. So I think that is a big piece of all of this. Now, if we were to actually think about how this fits into our infrastructure, again, I've maybe eliminated some monthly costs in this example of my educational course, but maybe, maybe that there's other places that we can start to consider as well. So let's think about something that's a little bit bigger here, but I think will hopefully drive the point home. Okay, I'm going to use the example of, and if you're wondering, I took notes and everything. I'm very diligent today. Insurance claims. Okay, so let's use insurance. Insurance is something, if you've ever had to go through an insurance claim, it is a nightmare. It is frustrating for probably all parties, the insurance side of it, and then more importantly, the end user, you who has maybe had an accident or making a claim of some sort on your insurance, and now you have to go through that. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and here's where I think if you look at the bigger picture and you start to see how these products actually fit into this, and how you start to think about, again, blockchain as infrastructure and how this starts to scale. Okay, so let's think about what an insurance setup and an insurance product would actually look like without blockchain. Current, kind of how it is today. One, everything is a manual claim intake. Okay, you could solve that in just normal like Web 2 stuff. Like I think there are some apps that are pretty decent now, different products. I don't know how it is in some other countries, but where I live, like there are some things that make it at least a little bit more simpler, where I can maybe take pictures with my smartphone and kind of go from there. The other side of it, though, is there's a ton of human intervention, a ton of it. Part of it is on purpose to maybe slow things down, but the other side of it is just that, like, there is a big issue around like fraud checks and review and really verifying what that claim is. Now, here's the thing where you can start to see some combination of stuff. Y- We know AI is going to come and start doing some of this stuff. AI, if it's not already, is going to start reviewing your pictures. It's going to start, going through that claim, that process again, if it's not already doing that, and giving feedback on it. The challenge there, though, is how do I know, even if I don't want to show it to the person making the claim, if I'm the insurance company, I just at least want it for myself. I need verifiable proof of how that all went through. So there's a great paper that came out from the founders here at Near about proof of response and some of the proof around the AI. That's a piece of it. The other side of it too is then writing some of those outcomes on chain, so that becomes essentially fact, right? That kind of starts to build into that. And then you can start to have your smart contracts built around that, where it's maybe, okay, this is a clean claim, whether it's human or AI verified, doesn't matter who it is. Now I can actually have that claim done, and now it is verified, and the payout can happen on chain automatically without any other intervention. And it could even be then done in pieces again, with minimizing human intervention, right? What if it is something like, okay, you'll get your first part. When you submit your receipt for whatever else, you get the next part. And what you've done is, yes, you've eliminated some human intervention, hopefully not eliminating too many jobs, but at the same time, those jobs right now or those things are just not the best use of maybe those employees' time, whatever. That's a separate topic. We're not gonna get into that. But again, lower staff costs, happier users, hopefully, because they're getting their stuff processed faster, more efficiently. The the follow-up, again, for fraud cases makes it much more clear. No more sifting through tons of records. Everything is there. If somebody was jumping from insurance company to insurance company, you would have all of that available. So this is all stuff that goes into there. So that's one part of it. But now, again, if you think about what happens here, is what about like when that insurance company goes under? What happens when, you know, there is some other incident that comes up and I need to be able to have all of that proof available of what went on in that interaction? How do I prove that? How do we get out of the, who said what, when, all of that? That's where this starts to solve that. So contract dispute, right, or claim dispute is simplified, right? All of this stuff is there. And again, for the product builder, so the one who's building the insurance side of that, the product, it's now again, like these are singular costs. The data retention, not only is it better, it is cheaper in the long term. Okay. Maybe even in the short term. It is decentralized. So now again, things get bought out. People are, insurance companies maybe go bankrupt, whatever it might be. It's still there. You're not worried about all of that stuff. You can still kind of go back to do that. And I want to go back to again the efficiency and the cost here of everything. Go back to the education piece here. Again, I can eliminate some of my stuff. I can start to eliminate some of my databases, maybe all of my databases by doing this. I'm simplifying my cost here. What if, and again, we could get real crazy here, right? Hold on. A piece of paper. What if it's set up like this, right? So I have a login, and my login is actually tied to a Web3 account, right? So we're going to say I have a near account, but actually it's really just a passkey, okay? Or maybe just whatever. It's my email. Doesn't matter what it is. But because of near account abstraction, easy, right? So I have that. That becomes my login for my course, right? So we're gonna stick with the course here. We're gonna show you how we're gonna tie this back into my other examples here. I have that, right? So now this account is now also tied to my course, which then leads to my certificate, right? Certificate, right? Right. So now I have that. All right. So I graduate, I pass, I have my certificate. Okay. So now this proof. This login, essentially, because again, it's on the same chain, could then maybe be tied into something like my insurance. Oh, you can't see that. Into, and again, this is just a hypothetical example. I understand many people have very poor things to say about insurance companies. I probably do too, but I just want to just show this as a highlighting example. I can log into maybe in my insurance company as well. Now, maybe that certificate was something that maybe was for me to lower my cost of insurance. Maybe it's a driving course, right? That's a thing, right? Especially younger drivers, right? Maybe I went through, I did that. My insurance company can verify on chain in seconds, milliseconds really, that I completed that course. There can be an actual smart contract in between here that does that verification. which then leads to a lower rate, which can be executed directly off of that instantly, right? I make a claim, my claim can all then feed into that as well. These are all the things that if you step back and you start to think about your product in a whole different format of saying, look, I want this to actually be able to be more composable. I want to be able to do that. Now, again, on near, what's really, I think, pretty cool setup is because of the chain abstraction, chain signatures, that data can live on another blockchain. So you're not like just tied to like, oh, everything has to like one blockchain has to win, everything has to be on there. Nope. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually have it where it's now set up in a much different setup of being something like, again, uh my near account, right, is for my education course. My insurance company is using a different chain, but my near account can go check that other chain. I can still log in, all stuff. But really, as the end user, I have no idea that any of this is crypto or blockchain because I'm just using my email and a passkey. And that is so much more simple to implement. It is safer, right? It is a much better setup for that end user. And as a developer, if you've ever built a fully robust authentication system, you know how much of a pain in the ass it is. Now, there's tons that are like plug and play now. The challenge I will say with plug and play stuff, as you probably already know, is that you are now again beholden to somebody else's code. You are now beholden to something else that is going on with that. So I don't love that approach as a developer. So I think that is something that is really key to all of this stuff. And again, here, where's my, what happened to my pointer? Here it is. Here, we'll highlight this a little bit better. So if my login allows me to get to my course, into my insurance, there's so much more interaction that I can do. And it makes, again, my life as a developer, and that's what we're focused on here, so much easier. Okay. Let's try out the next thing here. And this is the next topic, security and trust. And we've already kind of talked about that a bit, but I want to jump into another build case, another usage example of all of this that I think is like it just another way to drive this home. Okay, so the message here I want to get across on security and trust, and why I think for me as a developer, putting certain things into the blockchain and leveraging blockchain related technology, again, whether it's smart contracts, account model, whatever it might be, is actually a way to have safer experiences for your end users. Okay. I mean, it's literally built for data integrity and tamper proof logs. It's literally what it's built for. So here's, let's look at an example here of data leaks. Okay. So data leaks cost millions to big companies, cost millions to users, probably billions at this point, right? Things like that. Compliance, if you've ever had to work on a product that involves some form of compliance, I feel for you. It is not fun. It is very time consuming. It is hard work. And it is something that you feel like you never get right. And you probably, there probably is no perfect system. On top of all of that, we're in an age now that users are wanting to understand more and have better transparency into what is happening with their data, what is actually going on with all of that. So let's look at this example here I wrote out. Healthcare data. Now, again, a little tricky subject here, but let's just, again, this is a hypothetical, it's not perfect. But without a blockchain, there's a couple things that are available here that become potentially problematic, but also if you, depending on your healthcare system, and again, I have some, different biases related to being in America, but wherever you might be, it's probably fairly similar, except for a few places. You centralize medical records. One, easy breach target, sure. But two, good luck having multiple places leverage those same records. Okay. I know for myself, for every place I've been where I've moved across different parts of the country, things like that, uh, it is records all over the place. It's impossible to have a complete view, or you're trying to have things moved. I know for a fact that more recently I had to have records moved for one of my kids, and they used a fax machine. That's right, a fax machine. So that's happening. So insane stuff, but whatever. But now, what if, again, now we're talking, we're making some assumptions around like how the data is stored and encryption and things like that. So like, but we're not going to get into all that. Okay, we could, with a blockchain there, we can have logs of access and changes, right? We can know who actually modified something. I can go in and check. I can verify for myself. Oh, this doctor actually went in and put this in. I can have control over that data and be able to share it. That's something you could build on chain, that you could actually go and uh, have allow your end users, right, and have your patients own those access keys and be able to share with other doctors, other hospitals, things like that. Auditing those records like literally takes minutes. I mean, versus days, weeks, whatever it might be. So that piece of it as well, right? uh, you certainly can improve HIPAA that way, or GDPR or whatever other privacy records you might have across, in your country, wherever you may live. Uh, for the user, the trust between a provider and the patient should go up, because here's the thing: I now know exactly what you have access to. I can see it. I've let you see it. I can restrict access. It becomes such a different product when you are empowering your end user. And again, you could build this as a Web 2 thing, but I want to continue to harp on, and we're seeing this more and more, that these companies are now, they're consolidating, they're being sold. Your data is now who knows where. Like the big one, the 23andMe with the DNA testing. Like if you've done that and your data's there and still there, it's like they're going bankrupt. Who knows what they're going to do with that data? It just becomes a scenario where you, as the end user, as the patient, no longer have control. This gives you control. But as a product builder, this is actually a better experience for everybody, because it takes some onus off of you and your compliance, the compliance that you have to build in. It improves that as well. So, a couple key things there. Again, the way someone explained it to me once in talking to different people, especially in the healthcare industry, is something like this would actually be like version control for truth, right? Once it's written, I know it. So once it's been presented by a particular doctor in the record, it's there and we're great. Okay. Couple of things here too. And this is some notes I really wanted to highlight too when we talk about, again, security and trust. It's not just about like preventing hacks, because we can continue to get better at that stuff. But it's really about, again, your entire product. One of the things I've tried to highlight on this show here, DevHub Live, over the past year or so when we've been doing this, is showing products and talking to builders that you have to think of your end users, right? It really has to be about them, because even if you're solving a problem that you think is important, the end users have to feel that benefit. And the benefit for them is knowing that the data is trustworthy, that they can share their data, right? And then they can actually, feel confident of like it's in a safe place, and it's not going to just get bought. It's not going to disappear, right? I mean, like what? I mean, there's all these different things that go in there. And again, the thing of like who changed what, that log of like who's made changes is it's just huge, right? So these are all pieces that I think are really important. Okay. Let's talk about the developer experience. So, okay, there are tons of things here that we can actually do that I think are uh, really simplifying things nowadays. There are a ton of SDKs out there, and I'm going to use Near as the example, right? So just on Near alone, for smart contracts, right? We have Rust, we have JS, we have Python. Okay, we have, we'll call them, I guess, like API type of SDKs, right? We have them in JS. You could start to build them easily, in any of these different things, right? You just have to connect to an RPC, and you can build it. So you can build whatever you want. You're just connecting to that. You can run your own infrastructure easily. I would say most chains now have a fairly straightforward way to run a lot of your own stuff if you want to. Uh, but there's also services out there that you can pay. But the difference here is if I pay for a service, okay, so if I pay for a service, like maybe let's say an RPC provider, and they go down, they go out of business, whatever, uh, I am not losing any of my stuff. I'm just going to switch providers. I'm going to spin up my own server. I am no longer beholden to somebody else controlling my product. I might have an outage because of that, which is frustrating and maybe a poor experience for your users, but I'm not beholden to that. So, from a developer experience, I think that's really pretty great. I also think that, and to get up and running, there are so many different ways to do this really quickly. To deploy a smart contract on Near really can be minutes. You can have something pretty robust in like an hour, right? So like I could go from, you know, just even like a Python, let's say a Python SDK to a full-on smart contract, which then whatever, like then I then have my, say I have a Vercel app, okay, that then connects to that smart contract to do something. And this is all like you probably get that up in a couple hours, and I can now do an MVP really pretty quickly. And all I've paid for is pretty much nothing. It's my time, right? Maybe depending if this is testnet or mainnet, maybe then I have to pay for that, right? So let's say, right, let's say this could cost a little, right? Let's say it costs like 2 Near, right? To do that, it's $5. My Vercel, I have a free account, right? So now I've made an MVP for $5. And yeah, like this free stuff, like on AWS and everything else like that. But as soon as you try to scale, as soon as you have to go up, right, the price just balloons. Where here, a contract, yes, as I add more data to it, it will start to cost me more. But depending again on how I'm storing my data, what I'm doing, these are things, and these are one-time costs. I'm not incurring them monthly. So even if 1 month I have $100 of data I have to store on my smart contract, that's it. It's there. I've spent it. I no longer have to worry about spending it again the next month. So these are important considerations when we think about what that all looks like. Now, a couple different notes I wanted to get across as I was thinking this through here about what this developer experience really is about, right? Is that something like, and I'm going to use the example of like Fastnear. Fastnear has done a nice job of opening up APIs to allow you to instantly get started with querying the chain and getting data from the chain. And so now, like I don't have to build out my whole API structure. I am just have to think about the logic. As a developer, just trying to think through the logic is such a different experience. Again, and I know like AI is helping get more code out faster, but I will tell you, as someone who's been building for a long time now and is using these AI products, it really comes down to the thoughtfulness of understanding your logic, how it's going to work, that user interaction. And when you can spend more time on that, you're going to get a better product. So yeah, maybe your AI could build out all your APIs, but instead of having to do that and worry about connecting to a database, maintaining a database, all that other stuff that we went through, we can also just actually focus on the end user experience and say, okay, I'm trusting all this logic to be on chain. And that's kind of how I can go. Here's the thing, this works whether you're in a team, whether you are solo, whatever it might be. You start to have all of that stuff and you start to really introduce user owned data. All the stuff we've talked about so far, right? Whether it's my insurance example, it's sideways. My insurance example, my education example, whatever that might be, all of these different pieces, knock over my whole table over here, I'm getting too excited, is what goes into a really great developer experience. So where do we go from here? How do we get started? Okay. So down below, it's been streaming the whole time, is the docs for both Near as a whole and Near AI. Really easy ways to get started. I'm going to actually here, let me pull up. I'm going to actually pull up so you guys can see how easy it is to get started. I want to share my screen. Okay. We need to change our view here to, all right, I've added that to the stage and let's just go. Boom. Okay. So here is the Near docs just for the regular blockchain stuff. Easy ways to get started here. Look, you can drive it into whatever contract, everything we just talked about, right? Building smart contracts, what goes into it, deploying, the security of it, all of that stuff, right? And then from there, again, like, yeah, you don't have to even go through all this. You want to understand the protocol? Sure, great, you can do that, but you don't have to go through all of that. What I can see here, though, is again, whatever language I want, JavaScript, Rust, Python, whatever that looks like, I can go through and I can set up my contract, be up and running. And it's super simple to get started from this. There is some tutorials here that you can go through that I would encourage you to definitely check out and see. And they're great examples, again, of what does it look like to actually do some of this stuff? What does it look like to store, my logging on chain, my infrastructure? If I'm going to do my coffee example, right? What does that start to look like? How do I start to build that all out? Okay. So this, I really, again, I want to emphasize that you can get started super fast. It's really easy. It's really straightforward. I want to end. Let's end on here. Okay. So definitely, come reach out to us here at near DevHub, near Dev. Ask questions in the chat. Sign up for our newsletter. We're going to continue these type of discussions and go through it. I really hope anyone watching this, you got a good sense of how this actually fits in. And again, I want to be clear of what this message was. Building on blockchain does not have to be the whole thing. Building on blockchain can be something that is very focused on a particular piece of what you're building. It offers a lot of great opportunities for you as a developer to get started that maybe you didn't have, or maybe you have available to you, but are more complicated. The idea here is to simplify things. It is to provide better ownership to your end users. It is to make the experience for you as the developer and for the end user to have more trust in the product that they are interacting with. Now, more than ever in the time of the internet and apps and applications and software, do we need to start to emphasize more of this? And the blockchain gives the opportunity to do that. The ability to be permissionless, the ability to be transparent, the ability to actually have a great user experience without having to maintain some centralized service that's going to both put added stress and time and money on you. You can still do this leveraging blockchain. It does not have to just be about NFTs or meme coins or anything else. It can actually be about quality products that are leveraging this as a technology. It's not a solution looking for a problem. You are actually solving problems or improving experience. Forget solving problems, improving experience for your end users through this. I hope you learned something. I hope this sparks some more discussion. I definitely want to do this more because I think these are good things for people to go over. Next week we will have a guest back, maybe we'll see. uh, but we have a lot of great stuff though coming around. It's on our newsletter. A lot of different things happening in the near ecosystem around building, especially around near AI and things like that. We're going to have some more AI guest here on as well. Follow up from our previous guest. You know, there's been a lot of great stuff happening. Definitely go back and check out our previous episodes, see what they've been building, and just kind of going from there. Again, please reach out. We're always here to help. Come join us in our discussion on Telegram. We're always happy to have new developers, and we're happy to answer questions of how this looks, like that. I appreciate you coming, listening to me kind of go on about this. It's something that I think is important for developers to really reinforce to themselves, hopefully spread the message to other people. And for Web 2 developers, if you are new to this is your first exposure, I hope you got to experience what it actually means to leverage the blockchain versus just, again, probably what you've maybe heard in previous times. But until next week, I really appreciate, again, everyone coming on. I'm Joe, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.